Hey, so today we're building the 7x6 panoramic barrel here. We'll start off with the cradles, and this will be your starter piece here. So this here is a small notch out. That's where your panoramic's going to be. The bigger notch out, that's where your front wall will be. So you will use the longer screws from out of your pack here. Just grab a handful. Also grab a square. So typically we would go about 10-12 inches past. Since this is a shorter barrel, we will be doing 10 inches. Just right there. And you also want to make sure it's nice and centered. Measure from the corners. Or measure from in here, whichever one you find works the best. Put one screw in there just to hold it in place, and then you would square it up. And then place another 3 screws in there. And then we will repeat on the front. Oh, sometimes it takes a bit. Next up, grab 3 of your staves. Make sure they're nice and tight and your groove is going to be lined up. And then use the long screws again. And then I go on an angle here so that your next board is going to be covering the screws so that they won't be visible. Next we're going to be doing our front wall, so you want to be looking at which side your gable is going to be on. This is the block for the bench, so you just want to make sure that it goes to the proper side. So you see you have the groove here. So on the door panel you want to make sure that your tongue is going to be to this side. Just want to make sure that you're going center. So the center of that board should be lined up with your starter piece. Once you're lined up, just go ahead and slide it in. And then you can put 2 screws here just to secure it. Yeah, you just use the long screws here to secure it. Again, just pre-place your long screw here. Make sure you are lined up there. Place another one at the bottom. Next up, grab yourself a hammer and a mallet. And we're going to start putting more staves on. You have the lefts and the rights, probably. Okay, put your first one on. Second one. Now you just want to grab the nails. Just put a nail in there. That's just to hold it into place until we get our bands on there. It also doesn't hurt to leave a gap here, so tap it back a bit. You'll have an easier time tightening the bands, adjusting everything. And since we don't have a back wall to hammer it into here, we will be using this that comes with your kit. just temporarily place it into position here. If need be, you can add a couple of screws to it. That's just going to be temporary. Take it off once we have the bands on. Yeah, one thing to keep in mind is we do have a left and a right side.
Over.
You want to put that center bracing in. So yeah, just put the dome in once we're about a little past halfway here. And then we're going to put that top piece on. Just for support for now. That's just going to help hold it into place until we get built up further. And also, once you get up to a certain height, you no longer have to use nails. The boards will stay on by themselves. Once we get to the last board, you can remove this piece for now. Put the last stave in. And then you want to take a measurement. So right now we're at 4 1/4. We want to make sure that we're at least an inch more than what we have there so that we can compress it nicely. So what you want to do is you want to take all of these screws out and you want to add a spacer into here until we get this measurement to what we need. So your kit comes with 3 different spacers. In this case we'll need the biggest one, but you can choose the appropriate one for what you need. And then again, use the long screws. Make sure your grooves are lined up. So now that we've added the spacer in between, we can go ahead and put this up here. And you just want to get it into that position. You can do more than one if you need to. And the next step would be to get the bands on. Next step, you want to grab your bolts here. Grab your bands here. Go to the other end. And we'll just put these 2 ends together. And then we'll put them on the barrel. You want to make sure that your bolts here are going to be in your least visible side. And then you want to be 2 inches off the end so that it's going to be right where your wall is. On the back also right where your dome is. We'll do a second one for the back. fixed up, we'll start tightening them down. We just use a 3/4 socket on an impact. You can use a wrench or whatever you have. And then we'll just tighten it down a bit. Tighten it until you feel a bit of tension. We'll do the same on the front. Next we'll grab a mallet. And then we'll just start tapping it out. So we just tapped everything up and out until we have a nice circle here. You also want to make sure that your boards are all still straight at the front. Once all the boards are in place where they should be, you can go ahead and tighten it down more. It's important to check to make sure your dome is in the position it's supposed to be in. Next we will add our third band. Since we can't slide it on because of the cradles, we'll just go over and under. And then we'll go ahead and measure and make sure it's in the center. Once you have it centered, you can go ahead and tighten down a bit. Then you can go ahead and remove these support pieces here. And then you can go ahead and tighten it the rest of the way. It is important that these bands are nice and tight. However, you cannot really over tighten them. Just tighten them as much as you think is good. Next up, you want to put on your ice and water shield. So go ahead and peel one piece of plastic off. Now if you look at it from the front wall here, you can see where your center stave is. This will be your center stave here. You want to go just above on that one. That's where you want to start. Just staple the end on. Peel the rest of the plastic off. Pull it tight and staple it on. A little bit lower. Here. You want to stay away from this edge a little bit, just so that when your trim piece comes on, you're not going to see any of the blue. Next up, we'll be putting on your trim pieces. So where you want to start, you want to find center at the top of the barrel, and that's where you want your two joints to be. And then you can also line up your metal to that joint when you start with your roof. That's how you know it'll be leveled. So go ahead and use the long screw. You can pre-start it. You want to stay about 4 inches away from the end to keep this corner from splitting out. And just hold it into place. Add a second screw at the other end. And then for your last piece, hold it into place and then make your mark. Okay, sand over the corners. And then just do the trim work the same on the back. And then the next step, we'll put on this M-seal. It just goes up to right up to the edge of the trim. Line it up at the bottom of your ice and water. And just peel and stick. And then we'll just do the same on the back. So next we'll be putting on the metal. For that you just want to use the roofing screws. So since we had this in the center of the barrel before, we can now just line up our metal right to that. Next we'll be putting on the handles. So the short handle goes on the outside and the wider handle will go to the inside. You just take the long screw, place it there. You want to go 24 inches down, and then just center it. Careful not to over tighten it. It may split. You want to be 28¼ inches down. Also center side to side. If your magnets are not lining up, you may need to adjust your hinges a bit. Also make sure you have all your screws in there. Long screws. For your towel hooks, you can put them on either side, whatever you prefer. Just use the short screws. Might have to restart them. So next up we'll be doing the benches. We're going to start off with the legs that go on the back here for the dome bench. Now you have a left and a right, as you can tell here. So you want to grab a level. Place your level down and slide it until you're level. Right there. And then here you want to do the long screw in the bottom and just a short screw on the top here to make sure we're not going to be poking through. Don't over tighten it. up, we'll grab these benches. So we'll place the back bench on here as well, and then we'll come to the front here. We'll use the short screws. Make sure you go in between the boards to hide the screws. Before you put your screws into the back here, you want to put your level on the back bench here and adjust until you're level. Adjust this leg here. Until you see that your bench is now sitting level on here. Then you can go ahead and screw it down. Next, you want to make sure that your bench is centered here. And then you want to grab 3 long screws, and from on the bottom, screw it to the support leg. Next, we'll be adding the center support legs. They go on each divider here. Just want to use a long screw in the bottom here. Hold it up to the bench and slide it back until you're touching at the bottom. And then use 2 short screws on the top here. Next we'll be installing the backrest. You want to use long screws for this and just pre-start them here. And then you want to go about 8 inches off the bench, or whatever's comfortable for you. Place 2 more, one on each end. Same on the other side. So next we'll be installing the floor, and you want to make sure that this piece here that sticks past that's going to be the back of it. That way your front is going to be removable once your heater sits on here. Make sure you're centered. And then use 4 long screws to screw it down. Next up, we'll be installing the roof shield above the heater. So you want to go 8 inches off the dome. And then you want to find center. What I look at is I just look at the board that's above the door. You'll see the center line. Just line it up with that. And you want to grab a pencil and just mark it. And then you want to use the hardware provided. Take the and you want to use the small screw, place it in the hole, and put it on your mark. Now that you have your center two in, you can do the rest of them on the side by just holding them into place. And putting the screw in. Next, we'll put down the heater base. This one you want to go 4 inches off the dome. And then use the silver flathead screws to screw it down. Next, we'll place in the heater. We'll place it center in the shield. You can adjust the legs if needed. Next, we'll be drilling the vent holes. Grab your guard here. It's a 2-inch hole saw. Just make your marks and then drill almost all the way through. And then finish drilling from the inside. with a short screw. Place it centered so it covers both holes. Tighten the screw and then loosen off just a bit. And then secure the guard there. Next, install your vent kit on the back wall. You want to go beside the heater under the benches. Installing the thermometer and your sand timer next. And then once your electrician is done wiring up your heater and it's all ready to go, you can then place your rocks in there. They would go to the bottom here. Start filling it all up. Go all the way around the tunnel, and then also place some rocks on top of the tunnel as well. You don't want to go too high so that your rocks are going to start falling off, but you do want your air tunnel here to be covered with rocks. Another tip for maintenance is you want to make sure that these bands stay tight so that your barrel doesn't become loose and have air gaps. So it's a 3/4 inch nut. You just want to use a wrench or impact and keep those tight so that your sauna will last a long time.